Hello my friends and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Very special day today because we are going to visit the graves of Nicolae Ceausescu and Elena Ceausescu. Nicolae Ceausescu, the first Romanian president. There were no Romanian presidents before him. He was shot dead in December 25th, 1989 by a coup, I would say, after a that was not a trial, that was a kangaroo court. Now I'm gonna go through this door and I'm gonna visit the grave first. Then I'm going to talk about some politics, some geopolitics, current events, and then I will tell you about what I know about Ceausescu, with goods and with bads. I'm not his judge, but I'm not an idiot. Let's put it this way. So this is in Ghencea cemetery in Bucharest. The temperature are 94 degrees Fahrenheit and there's about 37 degrees Celsius or so. This is the entrance. There are two Ghencea cemeteries. One is civilian and the other one is animal. No, the other one is military. So let's enter through these doors or door, and once this cooperates. Remember, this is Ghencea Civil Cemetery. And Ceausescu's grave is not too far away. We have some gentlemen here that help me. Hello, bună ziua, bună. And we're going to go to Ceausescu. This is the entrance. This is very close. It is straight as you enter. The main entrance, obviously, is going to be located near a chapel. I'm going to turn around so you see. On the left, somewhere there, is Vadim Tudor, a Romanian politician. They will call it anti-Semite, far right, anything that's bad. Then you know that is. So right there, there's a chapel over there, and on its left is Ceausescu's grave. I will use Ceausescu. I will not use, not because I don't want to show any respect or anything like that. He was the president of Romania, after all. Dictator, however you call him, tyrant, I don't care. But I will just say Ceausescu, Nicolae Ceausescu. I'm not going to say Mr. or President. All right, nothing personal. All right, there were goods and bads during Ceausescu's times. So I will start with some history as soon as I get to the grave. And then I will discuss some current events. And I have here a little phone, and I will tell you the subject so you can say, okay, I'm not interested. You. All right. I don't mind that you're a free person. The first subject is about Burkina Faso. And why did I pick Burkina Faso? Is because this guy in Burkina Faso, the junta leader, is going to end up like Ceausescu. The regime change started over there. Why? Because he is with Putin. Second one, we have Asian countries are running towards BRICS, which obviously scares NATO and Al Capone, which Al Capone is NATO. Okay, so let's put it this way. Stay here in the shade. His grave is behind me with a red marble, if you want to call that color red. Now, Romania changes tactics. It is gonna build drone factories, military drones. Romania wants something. And Romania is under NATO occupation, and I will show you how and why that is so. The biggest NATO airbase is built in Romania. I will talk about that too. And the Russians changed their tactics in hitting Ukraine with cruise missiles, caliber cruise missiles from the Sea of Azov, not from the Black Sea anymore. So these are the titles, topics that I will discuss today. In the meantime, let's go to Nicolae Ceausescu. So here at the chapel, you turn left and it's going to be right in front of the chapel. This is a typical Romanian cemetery, nothing special about it. Yeah, there are beautiful cavos, or how you want to call this, things. And there is Ceausescu's grave, where my hand is. and here is the entrance to the chapel. So if you stay at the chapel, look forward, you're gonna see his grave. Before it was unmarked, if I remember correctly, it was just a piece of concrete on it. I would say disgraceful for a Christian nation. But since he was not killed by Christians, but by others, not by the atheists, but by others, I guess it fits. Here is Nicolae Ceausescu, președintele Republicii Socialiste România, 1918-1989. Elena Ceausescu, 1919-1989. I thought that she was, no, but anyway, so this is the grave with all this beautiful marble. There are a lot of people who come here on their birthdays and celebrate. Some of them come and do the opposite on their birthdays and on their commemoration time when they were killed. There's a cross over there. I think that's an Orthodox cross, and I tell you immediately if it is or not. Yes, it is. Because how can you tell that? The Catholics have the feet on top of one another, and they have only 3 nails, 1, 2, 3. The Orthodox have 4, 1, 2, and each nail in each leg, and the legs are next to one another, like it matters. But anyway, you know, because Jesus wanted like that. So here it is. I'm going to talk about, I'm going to stay here. I can't sit on this one, obviously. But I will try to talk about Ceausescu, his reign, his achievements, and his misgivings. Oh, no, I can't do that. So here it is. Ceausescu was born as a peasant. She was born as a peasant as well. They didn't have much of a formal education. I think they said that he had 4 grades, 4-grade education. It doesn't really matter, and at this point, because it matters. That's not what I meant. Like, it doesn't really matter if you have education or not. I'm talking about formal school. He was not an idiot. He was a smart guy, and this is not because I talked to him. It's because I read people who met him, enemies and friends. He was a smart guy. But as we all are, we are limited, and we are caught in our own world, and sometimes we cannot or we don't want to escape our worlds. I'm not going to talk about Elena much because I think Elena was a more of a negative factor than he was from what I know in our history. During his time, so he became president after Gheorghe Gheorghiu-Dej, the president of the, no, he wasn't the president, he was the, I can't remember, the chief of the Communist Party. They had a secretary general of the Communist Party. He died of a sudden cancer after he visited Moscow and with Nikita Khrushchev, and then he had an argument over there, and about a month after that I think he died of cancer, if I remember correctly. Nobody expected Ceausescu to be the next guy in charge, but again they say that he was put over there because he was kind of like, some say, dumb. And they say, well, he's dumb, we're going to be able to maneuver him. The problem is he maneuvered all those guys who put him in place, and he just remained over there, took care of his competition, not by killing them. Not by killing them. The biggest killings in Romania were before him. There were when you had non-Romanians being in charge of Romania, coming from Soviet Union, when those guys were running high and owning the Soviet Union, and that's not Stalin. And she was Anna Pauker. She was Jewish, just a coincidence. And others. You can remember Walter Roman, and Walter Roman, his son, was the first prime minister with Iliescu after the revolution in 1989. What a coincidence, right? Right. Nevertheless, so the crimes occurred in the first, after 45, 46, after the free world gave us to the criminal communists. And remember, communism started actually as an ideology in France, and with some French intellectuals, and then Karl Marx picked up on that, and then he did what he did with his help, with the help of his publicist, more or less Engels. Engels was not that as important ideologically as Karl Marx, and you can if you want to read the Capital, then you're going to understand why. The problem is these guys took control with Lenin, non-Russian, Trotsky, non-Russian, and many others from then in charge of Soviet Union with the Bolshevik Revolution, who took control of the Russian Revolution. So the Bolshevik Revolution was not the Russian Revolution, it was the Bolshevik Revolution. The Russian Revolution occurred a few months before the Bolshevik Revolution, but it was organized by outside interests. Remember, Trotsky went to New York to ask for some money from his people. And Mr. Lenin came straight, helped by the Germans during the First World War, to come from where? From Switzerland on a special train to St. Petersburg. Helped by everything was clear for Mr. Lenin, who was sent with a little mission to get Russia out of the war. And then they took over the poor Russians, and they started to create Soviets. Now, the founder of the Red Army was, if I remember, in charge was Leon Trotsky Bronstein. That was the Russian Trotsky's name. We know shit, all right? And we know much more than I can tell you here about who's who and what's what. You can look at Yogoda as well. You look at Kaganovich and many, Lazar Kaganovich and many others. Gengric, something like this, Yogoda, you find them. And those are just a few. All right, so eventually after 1945, after, the Yalta, Malta, Potsdam, the free world gave half of Europe to the communists, even though they knew those were bad, the guys in charge, but they were the right people in charge. And they were the media in the West, in New York Times and all those guys, they helped a lot to create a mirage of what Soviet Union is, because it was owned by the same people. Move forward. Accomplishments from Ceausescu. Accomplishments for Ceausescu. Look at some pictures of, let's say, cities in Romania in 1950s and 60s, and then look at Romania's in 1975, 80, 1985, and you're going to see a difference in boulevard, apartment buildings, schools, how do you call it, resorts. Look, go at Black Sea Resort. Look at, for instance, hydroelectrical plants. Look at Romania's independence from other countries. Paid the national debt with a big price for all of us. I lived through that one. He built, as I said, hospitals, schools. It was, and in the 1970s, Romania was actually doing fantastic. Why? Because it played a duplicitary role with the West. Remember, the first communist country that the Americans visited, the president of America, was Richard Nixon. It was not China, it was Ceausescu. And then also came here, it was Carter who visited, and also I think it was, I know it was Carter. I think it was Carter. I think there were three presidents, were they? Anyway, he opened the door. Why? Because he was the link, Ceausescu was the link between the West and China. He facilitated the visit of Richard Nixon to China when he met Mao Zedong being ill in 72, 73, something like that. All right, so that guy over there. He was a promoter of peace, especially in the Middle East. He got rid of all Romania's foreign debt. That means no debt. And I know other countries like Libya did the same thing, and it happened the same thing. He did a lot of dealings with the Arabs, with the oil, with others. He wanted to build a bank that would challenge the international banking system with the Arabs. Many things he wanted to do, and he couldn't. Now, He was a limited guy, more or less, as I said, and he was surrounded by bureaucracy. The bureaucracy, especially the guys around him, were not very literate. Some of them, look at Emil Bobu and others, who were, again, as he was. But there were some others who were infiltrated, and unfortunately, they came and they worked for MI6 and outside CIA. One example is the guy who actually sent him to the helicopter during that ill-advised meeting, demonstration in Sala Palatului. The last speech, I made a video on that one a few days ago in the balcony, and he was Victor Atanasie Stănculescu. He was an MI6 agent from what Mr. Colonel of how do you call it? Intelligence Colonel Romanian, what's his name? Teodorescu, I can't remember his first name, said, and not only. So it was a coup d'etat here on the foundation of the Romanian population's hate towards communism, hate towards Ceausescu, hate towards a special class that lived, very small class, and the Securitate that were specially treated. So corruption was rampant, but I don't think that had to do with communism. That had to do with a certain trait of certain cultures. Bribes, very common, and you had to go, for instance, you go to the doctor, you had to give some extra something for a better service, and they were doing their job as they were doing. Anyway, communism is not workable. That's my assessment on that one. Now, let's talk about the thing. Oh, education was free. Education was good. Access to information was very small. Freedom of speech, I would say, was in many respects wider than where I live right now, which is you wouldn't lose your job if you call someone, I don't know, this or that or that. Or if I go to the United States of America and I go in the office and say he's this or he's that, or I disagree with that, I disagree with that, could be fired in a second. Freedom of speech, no. There were a few things that you could not touch during his time, and I will tell you what happened if you did. That is, curse Ceausescu, curse Elena, communism, not to the certain extent, but being loud and obnoxious. And what happened then? I know that for a fact. You would become, and you would be told, advised to shut the hell up. You would keep talking loudly around people and bashing and talking like that. How many jokes we know about Ceausescu? Do you think these infiltrators in our society then, they did not know that? Yes, there were a lot of people who were on the Securitate's payroll, the secret police. They were, they had their job to, keep us safe, like CIA and FBI and NSA supposedly are doing it right now. In the name of the common good, they will control everything you say and everything you know. The problem is these guys were listening to us illegally. Those guys over there, they listen to us through Patriot Act and through other extensions of the laws without a warrant nowadays if they want. So they do it over there legally. I remember a guy that I know, as I still know that person, he told me, he worked in a Securitate very high up. He told me that their apparatura, the instruments to listen to the population, were bought from the West mainly. Not from the East, not from the Soviets. They were bought from the West. Why? He said, because they were the best. And he said, what do you think they were doing with those things in their countries? They were doing the same thing that we are doing. And I said, come on, no. I think they're definitely right. Now, obviously, technology is way ahead of what was over there. So these guys right now are with us right here, right? Shalom, hi, guten tag, whatever you want to use, they are over there if they want. Here, now, if after you were warned a few times, they would go to your wife and tell your wife, keep this guy zipped, otherwise you're going to get in trouble. And if the guy kept doing it, he would ask to come to the office, the police department, and talked, and threatened. threatened and then blackmailed with something that they found out from his past. And if, again, things continued, some of the bad people could be smacked around, but it was a process. It was not smack around the first day. Now, I'm not saying this is case by case. General rule is the one, the policy is the one that I just said it. Now, there are some cases when you're just grabbed and beaten. It's very possible. So, I tell you things that I know for sure. My grandfather, he was picked up one night in the 50s. So when those good people were around, he was picked one night, knocked at the door, dong, 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 dong. He opened the door. It was an evening. They were at the table, and he was in a, it was winter. And they took him in his clothes. They didn't allow him to take a hat or any coat. They took him, and he disappeared for about 2 weeks. At that time, it was the canal, if you remember. Canal that was, and not only, they didn't know if he was killed or not. My grandfather was born in the United States of America. He had an American birth certificate. He was an engineer. He was an intellectual. So intellectuals, these guys, not the Christians, you know, the other guys, exterminated the intelligentsia as much as they could so they cannot oppose them. Or they will try to have them work like rats because they need them. My grandfather became a rat, being over there and worked to death. He died of a heart attack here in Bucharest because of an argument having with his Romanian people from Bucharest. And he had a heart attack. All right, move on. Things that they were not okay with that. Besides school, being paid, dental, paid, you didn't pay shit unless you give some bribe to the guys so they do a better job. There were things starting 1980 something that were not there anymore. You couldn't find certain things. The food started to be scarce. I don't think anybody starved, but I haven't seen bodies on the street. They say, well, he was charged and convicted in that kangaroo show trial in 1989 of subminare economie nazionale. That is, how do you call it? Destroying the, destroying the national economy, and of genocide against Romania. Now that was bullshit, I tell you that. He could have been charged with many other things, but not with that. I don't think the penalty should have been death for either of these two people. That's what I think based on what I know. And they charged him and they killed him on the holy day of the Christians. By whom? By the Christians. Yeah, okay. Look at the guys who were in charge of that panel of lawyers, judges, witnesses that were not used. It was not, just go and watch it. That was not a trial. That was an order to be killed and show to the Romanians, who a lot of us wanted him to be somewhere kept. They said, well, we needed to kill him because otherwise his people, the communists, the terrorists will come and will take us and our revolution. No, the terrorists were the guys who actually initiated all this shit. And during the revolution, there were about 30,000 foreign agents, military undercover in this country. 30,000 about. They were coming from Hungary, they were coming from Bulgaria, they were coming from Soviet Union. They were not coming from Yugoslavia. All these people came with one thing, the revolution. So my friends, give me a break. He was overthrown and we wanted him to be overthrown, don't get me wrong. Romania had to disappear, but the Romanian military stayed intact. We had a GRU traitor, Mr. General Militaru, who was activated during those times, and he took control at one point and almost destroyed the country. We were saved, from what I remember, by General Ghencea, who kept the military intact. Otherwise, this country would have been right now 3 or 4, I don't know, Romanian stans or whatever, you know. Now it's only one Romanian stan, then it would have been about 3 or 4. And regions would have been given to countries that won it. And that was organized by the West, plus the guys in the East, with the support of our neighboring countries' friends. If you don't know that, don't blame me, blame your ignorance. Now, let's move on. He was killed like a dog, and she was killed like a dog, or like a female dog. They did not deserve that. During his times, I endured cold, hunger, lack of information, lack of books that I wanted to read, information. You couldn't travel in the Western countries. They could. That special class of the communists could. We couldn't. We could hardly travel in Eastern Bloc, like Hungary, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, Eastern Germany, Poland, Soviet Union. These were the countries that we could go to. And that's it. Here is there were no food, scarcity. We were poor. That's what it was. And they tried to keep us at the same level. I remember my father made about 5,000 lei during those times. He was an engineer, and he was a director as well. And he made 5,000 lei. 5,000 lei. A doctor would make about 4 or 5,000 lei. Plus the bakshish, that is the bribes, they would make much, much more. Now, a regular laborer will make, let's say, 2,500 lei, half. But you couldn't go over that. Ceausescu had a salary of 10,000 lei. That's all. All right, and the ministers 7,000 lei or something like this. It's true. See, oh, he got this. He got, rumors and talks that propaganda coming from outside, from the West. Oh, he got those, robinette our golden faucets at his toilets, and that was a lie. That was just yellow. But anyway, whatever. He's doing this, he's doing that. If I would have been him in his position in those times, and I was like, I want to do stuff, I would have been infinitely worse than he was. They talk about Nicolae Ceausescu, his son. Again, he was charged and convicted, and he died of liver cirrhosis. Again, if I would have been his son, I would have been much, much of an asshole than he was. But that's probably just because I'm an asshole, and that's it. Let me see if I can put a little bit more. No, I'm not going to try that. All right, so this is with Nicolae and Elena Ceausescu. They were killed in Târgoviște in that military base, and then they were flown with a helicopter, put in some plastic things, and whatever they were put in, the helicopter landed, took them over here, put some cement, put concrete over, a slab of concrete, and they did not mark that grave like animals. Well, the Romanians did it before with many others. Before, if you remember, Zelia Codreanu had the same fate, and many others in the same way. They burned them, and then they put, I think, acid over them, and then buried them at Doftana, I think it was, or Jilava, wherever they did, and so on. They also incinerated them at the Cenușa, the incineration home here. No. They did it before. Animals. Those are animals. That's why when people say, go around the fucking block a few times and learn about things, or leave things, and you're gonna have a very much disappointment of what we as humans really could become, or to the extent we are here sheep, they are the wolves. Even worse, I just insulted the wolves. Anyway, I don't think anybody else, there are some others. I think there's another son, the son that they, how do you call it, man? Enfiat, Jesus Christ, I can't find a word. Adopted, Valentin Ceausescu was one of the sons, the first son. I think he's still around, but doesn't really matter. I have no revival here. They make sure that Ceausescu will not have a revival. I know about a few years ago, when they make an opinion poll, he won among the Romanians as president. I can't remember, 10 years ago, 12, 13 years ago, something like that, when I saw it. So he was still very revered by some not. As I said, good or bad, he did not deserve that fate like that. No. But we entered the free world through an horrible assassination dictated, ordered by non-Christians. Remember that one. A Christian would not kill a person on the 25th of December in front of a wall in a hurry because the terrorists are coming to get us. But you sell that to the baboons because we, the baboons at those times, we believed in that. There was no freedom of press in his time whatsoever. There was also bad, and many other things. The economy collapsed because communism Communism is unsustainable on its own. Don't give me China. China is not an economic communist country, as by his economy. Without Western investments in the 80s and late 80s and 90s, probably there would be. I know some Chinese friends were very upset when I said it, but that's a reality. Whatever. If now these guys pull out of China, well, they still have the. I'm not saying the Chinese are not smart people. They are smart, but they were helped a lot in economy. China is not a communist economic system. It is to a certain extent. All right. Now move on here. Let me get those articles and let me start analyzing that. My friends, I know much more about this and history and about Ceausescu, the communist times, and so on. There is information that I have, knowledge that I have, things that I read, and not in the newspaper, things that I lived, people that I spoke with. Now, if you know a little bit more or a different nuance, don't discard my information, just add to it, because everything I said is there. You can verify it. So if you dislike something I said, as I said, maybe you know more about the subject, great, but I guarantee you that everything I said here is true and my assessment is kind of accurate. Nevertheless, you don't like it, that's fine, and I'm sure that a lot of things could be said here in what? In 31 minutes, not even 31 minutes, I can't cover all this. I need a few days to be here day and night with you and tell you how much I know about this situation. Now, Burkina Faso regime change started. Burkina Faso is that country with that guy, that proud guy, not proud boy, who is, I don't know if you see this guy right here, right there, the guy who doesn't shake hands. He shook only one person's hand. That is, I was about to say Vadim Tudor, Vladimir Putin, when he visited St. Petersburg. I don't know if that happened in, I think it was happening in St. Petersburg when he was an African something summit over there. Nevertheless, it says, attack on army base fuels Burkina Faso's mutiny rumors. That is the same with Athanasius Stănculescu, Victor Athanasius Stănculescu. You had always a column that is ready to be activated by people, for instance, that are educated in the West. They come back with a little mission and then their doors are open until they get to the position where the signal is given, and then you have the cell activated and an overthrow of a government that looks like a revolution occurs. That's how it's done everywhere, including in his times, including in Burkina Faso, who, military go and are trained by NATO somewhere. When they're trained by NATO, make sure those are NATO's people, unless they all of a sudden realize that they're patriots, nationalists. So, an attack that reportedly killed more than 100 soldiers on an army base in Burkina Faso has snowballed into speculation about unrest in the security forces. I said this about Burkina Faso, and not only Niger as well, or Niger as well. They will try to do that. Why? Because they are on the other side. That is the Russian side. And the Russians will do the same thing. Don't get me wrong. Moreover, right now, it says here, the leader of the military junta has since appeared on state TV, right, where the military has been in power since 2022. So this is one thing. Let's go to the next one. Asia tilts towards BRICS. So more and more countries want to get into BRICS, which is, if you remember that, developing economies, Brazil, Russia, China, India, and South Africa, with many other countries that joined in. Saudi Arabia, if I remember correctly, Iran, blah, 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 blah. These guys want to go in. And now Putin was in East Asia. He visited Kim Jong-un, the woodchuck in North Korea. He's going to give them high precision weapons. South Korea said that they will start sending weapons to Ukraine if that happens. And Putin said, be careful, we're going to fuck you up. And the Americans say, woo, we got another war. Guys, get ready. You're going to have, all of you are going to have services. I'm talking about the banks, military-industrial complex. They will have orders for weapons. They will get fatter than they already are with Ukraine. So, next one. Let's see. We have Asia once in BRICS. And I'm going to read you a few countries that really want to get into BRICS. Let me see where I find it. All right. I have a lot of articles here, so bear with me a little bit. All right, he says here, Xi Jinping and Putin win. Xi Jinping score wins as more Asia leaders aim to join BRICS, and they will. They will, and the Americans will try to bribe them as they always do. But the problem is the Chinese have more money than the Americans can print, so they lost. That's exactly what happens in South America and Africa. Whenever the Americans come and say, we're going to give you an aid, when I say aid, that means that's payout, protection. I give you this. The Chinese come and say, we're going to double that because we have the money. We have a strong economy. You have a service-based economy, which is garbage, this kind of service, unfortunately. Now, as Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese Premier Li Qiang wrapped up separate meetings in Southeast Asia this week, the two partners in the BRICS economic bloc encountered a region keen to join a group seen as hedge against Western-led institutions, and they will have their own institutions. So let's see what we have here. We have Thailand right there, is ready to do it. All right, let me see what else I find. All right, I have to find. Vietnam is ready, would like to do that as well. Then you have Malaysia, wants to come over, Red Rover, and that is right here. The bloc members have agreed to pool $100 billion of foreign currency reserves, which they can lend to each other during emergencies. The group also founded a new development bank, a World Bank modeled institutions that has approved almost $33 billion of loans, mainly for water, transport, and other infrastructure projects, since it became operations in 2015. That is against the World Bank, owned by Zelensky Steins, and the International so-called Monetary Fund, the same thing that guy over there wanted with his Arab friends. And he ended up as he ended up, so be careful. He says, Russia changes tactics, has 4 Caliber cruise missile carriers in the Azov Sea. They are not having those in the Black Sea. The NATO countries, that's from Ukraine, were able to kick them out of that with their Magura 5 sea drones, and not only. And these guys moved into the Azov Sea. They changed let's see if something is behind this funeral headstone. No. So they also moved their fleet. The Russians is very, very hot, as I can say. I mean, I can. You're gonna see me melting little by little. Okay. So they were able to kick the Russian fleet out of the Sevastopol, and they moved into the Azov Sea. They're gonna use the Caliber cruise missiles from the Azov Sea, which they did in the last attack yesterday. I made a video on that one, and they start from Sea of Azov, not the Black Sea, if I remember correctly. Next one. Romania under occupation, I say, and I will show you the article. Romania, and is obviously celebrating this garbage, has drones, will make drones, and right here it says, Ukraine's situation report. Russia now launching Caliber cruise missiles from the Sea of Azov. Here is the article right there. All right, it says here, a Romanian BBC News. This is from June 23rd. A Romanian village, that is Nicolae Ceausescu, village is set to become NATO's biggest airbase in Europe. And Romania is not under occupation whatsoever, right there. All right, let's see what these guys are saying. With that one, is clear is the Mikhail Ceausescu in Dobroja by Constanța, north of Constanța, if I remember correctly. There by Ukraine, by Moldova, by all those guys. And let's go to the last article, coming from, again, with the Romanians want to build their own drones. Whew, whew. All right, let's get that party started. I have many articles. I'm going to go back to Vadim Tudor after this, and I'm going to make over there, right here, Russia keeps 4 cruise missile carriers on the Black Sea and Sea of Azov. There's 4 of them. And the Russians say, all right, This is from Sputnik. Romania to launch domestic drone production by year end. Good, that means the Russians will put you on notice with their nuclear deterrence protocol, or however we want to call it. So my friends, things are not de-escalating, things are escalating in the world, and it's not good. I watched a video last night with Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, and he was asked by a guy from, I can't remember, Sky News, Sky, something like this, about what guarantees Russia would give the West. Why should the West trust Russia that would not invade, or something like this, that they will just stop fighting in Ukraine if Vladimir Putin's peace proposal that he just mentioned it, he said it again a few days ago, I made a video on that one. So why should they believe Putin and should they trust? And he said, we don't care if you guys trust us. We're going to just do real politics. Real politics. Why? Because he said we were burned too many times. And it was the question another person asked, a Russian guy asked from another media outlet, if you guys are going to be fooled again by the West. And Lavrov said, no, we're going to do whatever we need to do to win in Ukraine, and we're not going to have anybody else tell us how we're going to win and what we're going to do over there, which a strong country like Israel can afford doing that. Why? We know that, we know why, right? So here it is, my friends. Nicolae Ceausescu, Elena Ceausescu. I was never fond of them. Why? Because as a child, I didn't have chewing gum, I didn't have soccer shoes, I didn't have food, I didn't have, I couldn't do stuff, I couldn't travel, I couldn't see things, and I was very interested in seeing things, going abroad, learning, reading. I read a lot, and I read a lot because I had a neighbor who owned almost a library. He was a librarian and a bookshop keeper or something like that, so he had on about 3,000 or 4,000 books, all kind of books, so he helped us a lot, a neighbor. Helped us a lot. His name was Perekrestov. What name is that, Perekrestov? Anyway, so here it is, my friends, Nicolae Ceausescu, Elena Ceausescu, and I'm not saying that things are bad in Romania now. I think things are not as good for most of them. And this country is under, my assessment, under economic, political, military, and cultural occupation, not by Romanians. We have traitors over there, and we have incompetence. Remember, to be a traitor, you don't have to be incompetent. On the contrary, in this case, you have to be very competent in being a traitor. Otherwise, these guys will find you and will culturalize you. We need a cultural revolution. That I said we need that by intelligence. I said that before. Done psychologically, so these guys don't get it, that they are actually, their culture is changed, their wiring is changed into a better one. I'm at this every day here. That needs to be changed. Or in the Romanian style, which is a tyrannical style, these guys seems like operate that way through force, physical force. You go and do it, and it's threats. They react to threats much quicker and easier. That's a language that seems to be very well understood by this population here. I'm not here to bash Romanians. I'm here to help. If I could, I change that just like this. But we have to start from our children. You start with the children. But you need educators to take care of the children. Every time. Why? Because the children will grow up and they will be the adults in the future. All right, my friends, here it is. I don't have any in my mouth. And let me stop with this, touching the grave, because I always like to feel closer to, now that I, as I said, I don't pay respect or anything. It's just, and I'm not saying this to try to defend anybody or anything, because I don't care, all right? All right, thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.